guys. It's Tech Tuesday. We just got back from the dunes. I lost my voice. We had a great time while we were there, but we're back, and we're going to be doing a Tech Tuesday. And today's Tech Tuesday is a question we get all the time. Why is my body wearing? Why are my crossovers wearing? Everything that has to do with body wear, we're going to talk about today. But in order to talk about body wear, we got to go over to none other than Justin Smith.
What's up, Steve? You definitely did lose your voice, man. You talked to everybody, I think. That was like 4 days of nonstop, thousands of people, right?
Yeah, it was great, but I can't take all the credit because my man over here, Macholi, also talked to 1,001 people as well.
He took some of the stress off you, that's
Yes,
for sure.
but the wind and sand doesn't help.
Oh, actually, you know what? We were working yesterday, and you guys are both here working today. That is sick. No days off. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to talk about body wear today. As Steve had mentioned, it's something that we get quite often. Everybody asks. Why does it happen? What do we do to fix it? All kinds of different things. Body wear has quite a few things that cause it. Over on the board, we kind of narrowed down some of the stuff that's most important when it comes to UTVs. But if you can zoom in on body wear area here, here's the highest occurring items when it comes to things that cause body wear. So one is divider to body contact. Number one, this is going to happen at all times on every single shock. Before I go into this one, let's look at this one in the spring compressor. This is a bone stock shock package, completely bone stock spring package on a Pro XP. I'm not sure how many miles this has on it, Mitch. If you know, let me know, but it's not very many. So what we want to point out here is that the factory system, factory springs, factory shock package rubs bodies. This is normal stuff. People try to say that aftermarket springs do it, or our springs do it, or other people's springs do it. Okay, that is absolutely not true. It is that all spring dividers do it. It is that all spring packages do it. Spring dividers to body contact will always happen, and as long as that's happening, you're going to have wear. You can have more or you can have less, depending on circumstances, and that's where we come to the board. What's your step? Divider to body contact. That is this divider with a shock upside down. The same exact shock package on the back of the same car. This is the other rear factory. What's going on is as the divider slides up and down on the shock body, if you have some material in here, dirt, sand, mud, all of which is abrasive, you might as well be taking sandpaper and rubbing the body itself. Now that is going to happen on everything, no matter what you do, unless you're completely driving the vehicle in the show circuit only and never go out into the dunes or never go out into the dirt or the mud or anything else. Steve?
You were asking how many miles are on this car, Justin. There is just over 300 miles.
300 miles.
It was 312 to be exact.
312 miles, bone stock spring package. That's what you've got. Now, it just depends on where you're driving. It just depends on a few other things, too, because how much sandpaper is thrown in between these two affects how much wear you're going to get. Also, next on the list, a bad divider is worse. What we're trying to say is that the more worn out the divider is, or the lower quality of the divider is, typically when the dividers have excessive play on the inside of them, they're going to wear more. And the reason that they do that is because when they have play, they can kick sideways. And when they kick sideways like that, then they narrow down that rubbing right to the top portion, and it pushes in even further than it would if this was perfectly straight and spreading the load. So a worn out divider causes excessive wear. Low quality springs. The cheaper the spring package, the more you're going to have body wear. What I mean by that, the lower cost the springs, or the lower cost in your spring package typically, means that it's a lower quality material. Lower quality material or lower quality process in making the spring can lead to spring settling, fading, sagging, and when they do that, usually they're not going to be straight. They're going to have some bend or bow to them. On this bench, if you maybe are shooting this from the forward position, Brandon, I'm not sure where you're at, but maybe I could steal your level real quick. And Mitch, where'd you put that ruler?
Right behind you.
There we go. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. So if we go, We're just using a level on this phone so you guys can see exactly what we're talking about. But here's a spring, an upper spring off of this exact shock package, factory. Another upper, and a lower spring off this factory package. I may not need that straight edge, but let's take a look at how far off these guys are. This one is 4 degrees from being straight. This one's 3, almost 4. And this one's the least of an issue at about 1 to 2. This is our spring for this vehicle. We didn't quite get 0. Oh, hey, look at that. It just depends on where I might be holding this or rotating that, because it depends on whether it's on the machine surface or the round surface. But that's our spring package. Now, obviously, if the springs are crooked, typically from use and low-grade material, then what happens is the divider is going to sit crooked on the shock. I'm exaggerating the way it's going to be, but this is generally showing you what it's going to do. And when you kick that divider to an angle, left, right, forward, backward, it's going to wear the body much quicker, much more excessively, and that's going to wear the divider out even faster. And when the divider wears out, then everything gets worse. Hard to see in this video, I think, but one way you can tell when the divider's worn out is when you got a thin spot on one side, which this side is about halfway gone, but this side is very thick. The thickness on this side and the thin portion on this one tells you that it's riding on the shock crooked, and it's worn the inside out. It's probably done this on the shock because the springs themselves are not straight. Another thing that affects body wear, besides the spring, is a non-clocked spring package. So what that means is, come on over this side, where this lower spring ends and the upper spring ends, you don't want those lined up at all. You want those to be clocked 180 degrees apart. You want them on opposite sides. That will spread the load in the most even way possible and try and keep the divider straight. So a non-clocked package, both in factory and in aftermarket spring kits, is going to accentuate that tipped spring divider. Aluminum bodies on the shock. This is worse for body wear because aluminum is softer than steel, as we all know. Aluminum will put up with less abuse before it wears out. Aluminum bodies are very popular in UTVs for weight. Also, they're very popular in UTVs for the live system and electronics, because you've got magnets in these adjusters, and when this is a steel body, steel debris from the inside can be very, very, very fine just from normal use, can get into the magnet and cause issues, and that's another reason why there's aluminum bodies on these. Yes, Steve?
Justin, you were talking about spring dividers. Someone wants to know, do we sell spring dividers?
As a matter of fact, thank you, Steve, for the segue, but yes, we do sell spring dividers. You guys may not see this in this video, but you can see our name in that divider.
You can also buy them separately. You do not have to buy them with a spring kit. That was another question. You can buy those separately on the website.
You're right, Steve. So
What is the website, Steve?
That website's www.shocktherapyusa.com.
Plug. There you go. So you want to make sure that you guys, no matter what spring package you've got, make sure you've got a solid set of spring dividers. They are not all created equal. Our spring dividers are made of a much stronger material, but at the same time, it's very important not to make it too strong, because it's a lot harder. You can make it too hard where it's going to wear out the body a lot quicker. This is kind of the perfect mix. Also, our tolerance on the inside of this divider, if you take a look at this one to this one, you can tell it's a lot thicker material, so this is going to put up with a lot more abuse. It's not going to wear out nearly as fast. And the inside diameter of ours is much smaller. That clearance from our divider to the shock body means this doesn't tip sideways like the factory one does, or at least not as much. We want some play in here, but we don't want very much. You change that to a factory one, and it's all over the place. This movement is what we're knocking down with ours, so make sure you buy a high quality spring divider if you're not buying ours. Take a minute and research it and buy the best one you can. Aluminum body wear is the worst. Also your conditions, sandy, mud, or worse. So where are you running your UTV? What is getting inside this gap between the divider and the body? Is it just sand? Well, that's as bad as sandpaper, if not worse. Mud? Well, the problem with mud is it's so tacky that it'll stay in this area, and then that divider can just sit there and rub on the same mud over and over and over again. At least the sand actually drops out of it. Anything that's got really tacky surface on it or consistency to it's going to be the worst. Also, if you don't clean your shocks or clean your vehicle very much, so you go to the mud and you barely wash it off with a hose, guaranteed a lot of guys aren't getting up in here with the hose and blasting this area clean. They're leaving a lot of material in there. That means the next time they go out and it's not muddy, they still have mud in there and they're still destroying that clearance, they're destroying the body, premature wear. It does not matter whose spring kit, stock or aftermarket, it will definitely wear. All of them wear, just to what extent. Any questions? Next, I've got some things that could fix it.
Can there be a stainless steel sleeve adapter to the shock body to help with this?
Excellent question. It just so happens that is on our list of things that cure this kind of stuff. Take a look at this shock right here. This is off of a brand new Pro R, actually Pro R 2-seat over there. Yep. So this is a stainless steel liner compared to an aluminum body behind it. This is pretty standard issue when it comes to all the new vehicles. One of the first ones that come out with this was the KRX, had the first steel liners of all the OEMs. And since then, we've got the Pro R, and what other ones have we got some of these on, I think?
Talon IBPs have them. The aftermarket set up for Talon IBPs. I think that's it.
But I can tell you with a lot of confidence with some of the meetings that I've been in that this stainless liner is going to become very commonplace on a lot of the OEM stuff. And there's a reason for that, you guys. They're trying to stop some of the body wear, and that has nothing to do with our spring, our divider, factory springs, factory divider. They all wear. You're dealing with material in the middle of that. Just to what extent? How much does it wear? Depends on a lot of factors. So yes, stainless steel liners are badass, and a lot of the factory stuff's going to it. We actually have some things in the works we'll tell you about later, but not right now. Other fixes: diameter and clearance. Because of the structural design and engineering in a spring, the larger the diameter of the spring, the more stable that spring will be. And if it's more stable with diameter, then that divider tends to not kick sideways. So the opposite is the case, where if you have a small diameter shock, like say 1.5 inches or a 2-inch diameter shock, that might have a 2-inch or a 2.5-inch diameter spring on it, that smaller diameter spring will allow the divider to move more, and you typically see more wear on a 2-inch and a 2.5-inch diameter shock than you do on a 3 or larger. So going forward with a lot more 3-inch shocks on the market, you're going to see a little bit less wear, but it's still going to be there. Another thing you can do is clock the springs. As I mentioned earlier, if this clocking is inaccurate or these ends are close to touching each other, that's a problem. Typically, having them on opposite ends of the spring package when they're on the divider, like so, will keep it as straight as possible. You can never cure a crooked spring package completely, but you can make the problem less. Less wear. A lot of these things all add up, so take it where you can get it. Steel bodies. Steel bodies wear less than the aluminum bodies. Examples of this would be a Walker Evans front 2-inch diameter shock on an XP 1000. Or you got, what's that?
Older models, though. The newer ones.
Older ones, right? So the older ones had steel bodies. There was no wear on that. Newer ones have aluminum. Lots of wear on that. There's some steel bodies also in some other models. And but as soon as the live valve stuff and computer controlled stuff came in, and weight concerns, then everything pretty much went aluminum. That's most of what you're going to deal with. Stainless steel body liners, as somebody had asked, and as we have for an example, stainless liners instantly cure it. Now you'll notice this has got a lot of wear on it, or at least you can see the shiny bits, but that shiny stuff is from the materials and the other reasons and other factors that accumulate to give you body wear. It's just that the stainless is a lot stronger than the aluminum, so you're not going to see as much wear on it. It still wears, just not like an aluminum body. Better quality divider. We already talked about this a little bit. The higher quality divider you can buy we spend a lot of time and energy on our design and materials and clearance on ours, the less wear you're going to see. And these are standard with all of our spring kits. Better quality springs, super important. Super important. Why? Because we already pointed out, take a look at the tops of these factory ones. None of them are straight. Well, that contributes to body wear right away. Our springs are much straighter. I can't say perfectly straight. Here's why. Because making a spring is a very complicated thing. We have a really high tolerance in our spring package, both in the material that's used, the process that we use to run the spring or manufacture the spring. A lot of people hot wind them and then have to heat treat them, and there's problems that arise with that. We cold wind them and remove all those problems. The tolerances that we're looking for in our springs are 2% or less in spring rate variance, which means it's exactly the rate that you want, and 2% or less when it comes to this angle. So if you've got 2% or over 2% in our spring package, when we get these springs brand new, it's actually tossed out. We will not get that. Our quality control is very, very high. Standard for the industry is about 5%. So we have a tighter tolerance by 100% over the rest of the world when it comes to springs. So the higher quality of the spring, the better. No sag, no settle, no movement and bending in the spring will help you with body wear. And ours are pretty damn high quality. Clean environment. Well, if you could possibly drive your UTV where it doesn't get dirty, you'll never see some body wear that's going to wear it out. You're going to see rub marks, and you're going to see some wear. There always will be, but it's just not going to wear through the body like some things do, like these guys right here. But none of us are going to drive them in clean areas. It's off-road vehicles. So, I mean, what are you going to do? It's dirt, it's mud, it's sand. It's going to happen. You have to get used to it. Clean your shocks. That's the best thing you can do when it comes to environment. Next, new dividers when you rebuild the shocks. I would get into the habit every 2,500 miles, if not more, or sooner. Every 2,500 miles that we recommend that you come back and have your shocks freshened up, you just do new dividers at that time. Yours will have seen some wear. Throw a new set on there, you keep the shock body life in there a lot longer. Steve, I thought you raised your hand.
No, you were talking about body wear and talking about thickness, and I'm a lot thicker, so I can take a lot more body wear is what I was getting at.
Oh, so
that's what we were giggling at.
The thicker the shock, equal to the thicker that you are.
Yeah, and then I can just take a lot more body wear because I don't stay in clean
Does
environments.
that mean that we could rub on each other a little bit longer like a divider and a body and it would not have any issues with you?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. We'll look forward to that later. All right, last. Besides dividers, whenever you rebuild the shocks is just a good idea, so try and keep that thing as tight as possible. Steve, back to yourself.
Thank you.
All right. The last thing we want to talk about, not necessarily how to fix this stuff, but something that we also get a lot of people asking questions about. Crossover ring and crossover ring wear. So crossover rings all wear. Crossover rings always contact the coil spring, unless you run a coil spring that is much larger for the shock package than standard. So industry standard is a spring that's a 1/2 inch larger in ID than the shock body itself. So if you take a look at this one, this is a 2.5 inch diameter shock, and that is a 3 inch diameter spring. So we have a 1/2 inch of clearance all the way around that spring to the shock body. 1/2 inch is pretty standard stuff. Now you could run a 3.5 inch spring or a 3 3/4 inch spring on this and gain diameter. That would give you enough clearance to miss a crossover ring if that was installed on the shock. At the moment it's not, since it's still in stock form. But you can see there isn't very much clearance between a divider or between the spring itself and the crossover, and that's by nature and also by design. When you run a spring that's much larger than the shock itself, you run into other issues. Typically the spring is going to run into the packaging of the reservoir. Reservoirs are always tighter to fit the vehicle, and a lot of times you can't even fit a larger diameter spring on a shock just because of vehicle clearance. Also, they're a lot more expensive and a lot heavier. So it's just not part of what the industry likes to see. With a 2 inch shock and a 2.5 inch spring, a 3 inch shock and a 3.5 inch spring, or 3 3/4 inch spring, all crossovers will see some wear. Now, they're not seeing wear because the spring moves up and down on them. They're seeing wear because as the spring is compressed, it actually vibrates side to side. And if I could compress this spring quickly, and you could see it in slow motion, you would see this spring shaking side to side as it compresses. This side to side harmonic is what bounces off of the crossover as the system is functioning, and it will wear the crossover. Crossovers, dividers, are wearable parts. They're exactly the same as a clutch in your car, or brake pads in your car, or tires on your car. On your street car, you have to buy them, and when they wear out, every single one of them. These are designed to do that, so they try not to take out other parts. When bodies wear too far, you need to put a body on it. These are all things that are going to wear no matter what. So, if someone says their springs always wear on the body, that's not true. All spring packages wear on the body, including the factory ones. It's just to what degree and what things added up to create that wear. Was it the body being aluminum? Was it the divider that was already worn out? Was it low quality springs? Was it that they weren't clocked correctly? Was it sandy or mud environments? All of those things add up in a big way. But the factory system does it, and everything else will too. You guys have any questions on any of this?
Not necessarily on that, but somebody noticed on this shock, Justin, they asked, do you recommend keeping those factory plastic shock guards on?
Yeah, I'm a fan of the plastic shock guards. A lot of times, though, you can't, because a new spring package might not clear it, or it may not clear the spring package, or it might not clear an aftermarket control arm or trailing arm for whatever reason. Some of them we have to take off. I forget exactly which one. The Turbo S, I think we take off.
Turbo S we do.
Because it gets in the way of a whole lot of other stuff. But I would recommend keeping them if you have any way of doing it. On the race car, we build hand fabricated versions of that kind of stuff to try and protect the shaft. Typically, most of seal wear or leakage is due to a rock or something that's hit the shaft. As a matter of fact, I just put my finger in one spot and I can feel a little small nick with my fingernail on this. And a lot of times those larger, a small nick turns into a big one, or a bigger rock causes a problem where the shaft's got a nick in it and takes the seal out. And that's a lot of what we see when guys are following each other in the dunes, or when they're following each other, trying to pass each other in the desert. So I like rock guards for sure. Mitch?
Has anyone experimented with new or exotic materials that could prevent body wear and increase divider wear?
Yes, there have been bearinged style dividers. Dirt and sand and everything gets in the bearings and it wears out the body. There's been aluminum dividers that are of different grade, softness or hardness to the body. So for instance, you go with a softer divider and a harder shock body so that the divider is the first one to wear out. Those have to be such tight clearance that even grains of sand would get in there and it would seize up the system and then the spring kit wouldn't work. A lot of those aluminum style ones only work on trophy trucks or something that's 7,000 pounds and giant spring rates to push it past the sand. Also, aluminum on aluminum is like a one race thing. Those guys are changing parts all the time. That they're not going to be looking at running thousands of miles like you guys are in UTVs. A lot of other exotic materials have been tried. Typically, the new divider wears out too quick or the body wears out too quick. It's not something that's monetarily conducive, certainly not to the OEMs, so they've stayed away from it. The best option is the new stainless liners that are coming out on the UTVs now. As long as it's a higher end UTV that's got a higher price point and a couple of these can be pushed into that total, then you're going to see a lot of those, and that's actually the better way to go. Yes, Tom?
A gentleman named Jake is asking little nick. Oh, sorry, little nick on yeah, the little nick on the shaft you found. He's asking, are you able to resurface that?
So no, you can't resurface it. What you should do is we can take an emery cloth, a polisher, and we can polish shafts. But that's only if the nick is taller than it is deep. So if the sides of it, like a crater, have come up, we can polish that off. And if the depth of that nick isn't too deep to take the seal out, then that's an option. Otherwise, we're buying new shafts. There isn't any other option for you.
Justin, we got questions this weekend a lot about shock socks or shock savers, the covers. Would that prevent body wear?
Yes and no. So what Steve's talking about is the stuff you see wrapped around the spring package and keeps the shock from seeing any debris. I like those because it will stop the obvious rocks and things from smacking the shaft and causing leaks. I don't like them because they retain heat. Excessive heat can take out seals and melt shock parts. But if you're kind of the recreational guy, you don't drive, if you're not the fastest guy in your dune group, then I think those are fine. You're not going to overheat the shock anyway. But if you're racing, or if you're, literally the fastest guy around, and you might be able to overheat shocks as it is, then those are not going to help. They're going to retain heat. You can definitely run those and get some shock life extension out of it. You're going to have less debris inside this divider. This is mainly the area we're talking about. We don't want dirt to get up inside this divider to body clearance, and shock savers will help that. If you are in the mud and mud gets inside the shock saver, which typically it will, the problem then is that it's kept in the shock, and you will cause more wear if there is a seal issue. So how they're installed, how they're used, and where you're driving is going to are the biggest factors to whether I like them or not. For play guys, yes. Probably not for any mud guys, and not for any racers. But you guys more?
Another question with RC2s, when we get them, do they have the upgraded sleeve you're talking about?
No, RC2s don't have the stainless liners on any of them. But the Kashima coating is very, very hard that comes on that. And the newer black coating is also very, very hard. So it'll take a lot longer to go through that and get to the aluminum. So the wear on that is much less, typically what we've seen.
And he said when we get RC2s, we do have RC2s in stock there, Dami.
Oh, does that be the boxes on your right? At least 10 or 15 sets maybe? At the
Close
moment?
to it, yeah.
So stay tuned with stuff that's coming in stock one way or the other. But you guys, to kind of put an end to the body wear thing, it's not specifically to us, it's not specifically to IBOC, it's not specifically to anyone who has a spring kit, whether they wear more or less. It happens with the factory stuff. Anyone who says that doesn't is full of it. And all of the factors that I mentioned up here add up to about how much you're going to see. So if yours doesn't wear as much, maybe you don't have all of these factors coming into play. If yours wears more, your body wears more than the rest, maybe you have all of these factors in play and causing that. Keep that in mind whenever somebody talks about this one way or the other. So thanks a lot for tuning in. I know this is on the short side, which is awesome for us. Go back to work. Yep, awesome for Steve. But thanks for tuning in. Hopefully this gave you a little bit of information and helped you with your decisions on things one way or the other, and made you a more informed buyer on components. Talk to you guys soon. Steve, take us out.
Guys, if you're looking to buy dividers or even a cool Halloween Glamis t-shirt, we still have some left over. Visit www.shocktherapyusa.com, or if you have any questions, please call in 623-217-4959.